Ah, bollocks.
Okay guys, welcome to another video. It's a VR to Novabug. Chris, now he is asking, will there be nostalgia attached to this decade, this sort of like current generation of gaming? Now, it's a good question, it's an interesting one. Firstly, I think what you need to think about is what is nostalgia. Nostalgia is, to my mind, it's an emotion that becomes attached to certain things, whether it's an event, dare I say a smell, a sound. It can be anything. It could be something that when you experience it again, it brings back a feeling of usually happy emotions which are attached to an event that's happened in the past. Yeah, it's usually I don't think you'd get an unhappy nostalgia. Nostalgia, I think, by its very word itself, is a happy thing. Now, for kind of old games, 8-bit, 16-bit, whatever, I think for the most part, um, when I play certain games on certain systems, usually the C64, because that was my very first sort of computer system. But not even just that. I mean, even Atari 2600, which I didn't have, but you know, when my mates had it. When I play certain games on the C64, it takes me right back to a time when it was happy times. You know, I wasn't working, I was still at home, mum and dad were still here. You didn't have any real responsibilities. Excuse me. Yeah, it was a time of innocence, and the only thing you were really interested in was when you could play your computer, when you could get more games for it, whatever. It was a very, it was a happy, carefree time of my life, like most people that remember the 8-bit kind of era. So, will you get that in this generation? Now, Chris hit upon a good point. What he said was a lot of the nostalgia was probably down to the fact that the games were written, they were written from the heart. A lot of the 8-bit games, until later on when they became, your big oceans and that kind of stuff, and you got like big teams. A lot of the games were written by guys quite literally in their bedroom. They were written from the heart. Um, these guys wrote games because they probably wanted to play them themselves, and they would have given the absolute best. In most cases, don't get me wrong, there are some absolutely shocking games out there that were released, in fact I'd probably say the majority of games that came out in the sort of 8-bit era are probably not worth playing now. There were some terrible games that did come out, but the majority, the good games, the games that we all remember, your stuff like Jetpack, Bruce Lee, Beachhead, whatever, Night Lore, Batman, Drop Zone, all these games, they were written with passion. The guys that wrote them, they were really giving it their 100% all to try and do their best. So that is a big part of it. Why I think that comes over in the game code itself. When you're playing the game, you can tell the guys, the people that were writing these games, really wanted to give you the best experience. Now, um, now something, I don't know if you've watched my interview with Jim Bagley. I asked Jim a question about did you always give your all when you wrote games? And what he said was when you were part of a team, I guess you were let. In fact, Jim didn't say this. This was I'm putting words in his mouth. What Jim basically, he made a point about, he worked his butt off in this particular game. He was part of a team. He worked his absolute arse off, did stupid hours, and he got a really pitiful pay at the end of it. Then on another occasion, he's seen people virtually doing nothing, just giving what they had to give, and they were getting like a bonus for it. So there was really no incentive to do well. Now, I'm not a game coder at all. I can imagine if I was part of a team of, say, 100 people. I mean, some of these new games nowadays, the credits at the end of the game run to hundreds. They're like films. There's, hundreds of people take part. Now, I don't for one second think that you are going to have the same passion and enthusiasm for if you were only responsible for, say, I don't know, writing, designing one particular level. If that's all you did in this massive game, I don't believe you're going to have the same passion than you would if you're writing a whole game from scratch, doing the graphics, doing the sound, everything, all the level design. Because ultimately when that game's released, you're just a number in amongst all these other hundreds of people. So I don't think the same passion's there. It's not to say for one second that games nowadays are not amazing. They are. I mean, some of the games now, in fact most games nowadays absolutely blow my socks off. Do I enjoy playing them? Maybe not. I'm very much old school. But I think the nostalgia side of things comes down to what system. I mean, back in the day, we all had our own systems. I had a C64, my mate had a Spectrum, I had a mate who had a BBC, there was guys who had Atari, then there was Amstrad guys. We all had our own computers. Back then you couldn't afford, I don't think anybody I knew, in fact no, I didn't know anyone that had more than one computer, because games or systems were like £300 to buy. It was a shitload of money. Tech nowadays is a lot cheaper. So people simply couldn't afford more than one machine. So you remember playing Manic Miner because it was on the Spectrum. I remember playing Drop Zone on the Commodore 64, and Beachhead. To my mind, Beachhead was the best on the C64. It was the original as far as I was concerned. So you've got nostalgia for a system. Nowadays, and again, it's a point that Chris made, new systems, they're the same. I guarantee if I was to make a video of, I don't know, the Xbone running whatever, or even the 360, if I was to show you a game on the Xbone and the PS4 and I ran them side by side, I would guarantee you couldn't tell the difference. The same with the Xbox 360 and the PS3 and the Wii U. No, maybe not so much the Wii, because the Wii was a kind of underpowered machine, but they look the same. They look the same on no matter what system. So in 30 years time, 20, 30 years time, I think you're going to get nostalgia for some of the games, absolutely. I mean, guys that are maybe in their, 16 years old just now, playing Call of Duty all the time, they're going to look back, I'm sure, in 30 years time and tell their grandchildren, yeah, I remember this game, Super Mario World, oh, it was brilliant, blah, blah, blah. And there will be a bit of nostalgia, but I don't think you're going to get it to the same extent, because we're spoiled for stuff now. I mean, games, back in the day, money wasn't as easy to come by. Not to say that we're richer now, but it was certainly harder. Things were a lot harder back in the 80s, the 70s and 80s. So when you got a game, you played it to death. You absolutely played it to death. And whether or not it was a good game or not, you played it to death, and that's how you end up sort of forming a kind of an emotional attachment to it, which can then turn into nostalgia when you're a bit older. But now, games I think come too easy. You don't have the experience of going to the shop, buying it. You don't have the experience of reading the review of it. Back then it was a big thing. I used to get the Zap magazine. I would read the review of a game. I would go up to the computer shop and the guy would say, oh, I'm not getting it in until next Saturday. So you'd have this anticipation waiting on a game. Then when you did get it, you would rush home, you would read the instructions, you would load it up, you had the whole expectation of what was going to come. Nowadays, you go online onto your PS4, whatever it is, and you just go into the store, click, boom, download, play. You don't have anything tangible in your hand to show for it. So there's a lot that you don't get nowadays. So as much as I do think people nowadays, gamers nowadays, will have nostalgia for some of the games that they play now, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as powerful as it was back then. Back in the 80s, computers it was a whole new cottage industry. It was exciting. It was you really felt like you were living, and living the technology, you were living for tomorrow sort of thing. Nowadays people are used to iPads, they're used to streaming videos and what have you, I mean, you've got games on mobile phones and that kind of stuff, so I do think you will have it, but I don't think it's going to be to the same extent. So anyway, that is my tuppence worth. Thank you very much for watching.